Welcome to Our Fighting Spirit, the podcast that celebrates and shares the stories of those who believe in persevering over giving up, standing again after falling, and continuing to live and build a life of their dreams no matter the circumstances. Here's your host, Anthony Gigante.
And welcome to Our Fighting Spirit. Today we have a very special guest and a very special family. Rico Corrubia is a legend in the entertainment industry. He has been a sound designer for probably every show you may have seen, from Bruce Springsteen to Peter Townsend to The Who to Frank Sinatra, and basically every show on Broadway he's been involved in. We have his lovely wife today, Rebecca, and his son Lucas with us today as well. And we have a very compelling story to tell. Rico, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing great. As you know, gigantor snowstorm in Atlantic City, which doesn't know how to handle it, but it makes it quite beautiful here. You know, just white landscape and the ocean. It's gorgeous. Good day.
Nice and peaceful, I know. Rebecca, yes. How are we doing? And Lucas, everybody well?
Good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Great. Rico, where we met, we immediately hit it off. We immediately became friends, like we're friends forever. And when we finally had a chance to talk and find out about each other's lives, your story blew me away. And if you can tell me prior to, how did you get started in the sound industry? How did that all happen for you?
That was a summer job. Basically, my life was not moving in this direction. I had finished up in film school, working in media, and thinking about going that way. But then I ended up with a job just because jobs were kind of scarce, working at Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., using theater as a therapeutic means for family therapy. And I was really enjoying that. And that was a great job. Then the pay wasn't great, but it was just something I really wanted to do. And I knew that if I advanced my degree, I'd move further in it, you know? So I, all of a sudden, I was just talking to friends that I grew up with and other friends in the industry. And they said, "Hey, did you hear Atlantic City's got casino gambling, and they're giving out great jobs with great pay for that time period?" What great pay was ridiculous. But anyway, I was just so excited. So they said, "Have you ever done sound?" I said, "No, plenty of filmmaking, you know, video and video art and video recording." And they said, "Well, come on down and move to Atlantic City for the summer, and then you go back to college. You'll make a ton of money because we're opening up 2 new casinos and you work around the clock." And I go, "Fine." So I go do that. And I started to like it because it was just like, it was just nice. The community was just really wonderful. And the community of people doing production was just really exciting. And I liked that, rather than the community of the intellectual, which was very separate and a little more, stuffy, of course. Mm-hmm. So I was having a good time, maybe too much of a good time. So I kept doing sound, and before you know it, all of a sudden I'm sitting behind the console and Frank Sinatra's on stage. And that was like, wow, this is unbelievable. This is wonderful. And it was just, then I realized the art of mixing and the art of an 80-piece orchestra on stage with a singer. That was just so compelling. And then we'd have Broadway shows come through. I mean, Atlantic City was happening then. And so everybody was coming through, everybody. So you then, just by being on the crew, you got to be with everybody and everybody else that's on the road. And to see that back then the road was romantic, you could romanticize it. It was fun. It was great. People were together, families. So I stayed. And here I am 40 years later, still doing sound. Didn't go back to school, which I could say now I have regrets, but I'm not complaining about the road life and the life of being a sound engineer and a creative sound engineer.
Creative is the key. I mean, you are a creative man, and your career kind of took a life of its own, because from one opportunity led to another, and then another, and then another. And before you know it, you're working with the top people in the industry, and they would call you to work with them. They would find you. You didn't have to even look for work. They would find you and ask you if you were available.
No, that's why I never really went back to school because after I go, okay, that's enough now, let's go. And then I had a call from another production manager who came through and go, are you available? Wow. Yeah, okay. Oh, you mean we're going to Australia? Wow. You mean I'm going to get out of New York, New Jersey? Fantastic. So, I mean, that's the way it just kept growing. And it just evolved. And then all of a sudden, certain people like Michael Crawford, I'm working with him and we're filling arenas with the Phantom of the Opera. And then all of a sudden, hey, I meet certain people and I'm doing Tommy on Broadway. That was just unbelievable to work with Pete Townsend, to be one-on-one with him. And we became buddies. And that's what I feel is old school with that type of sound. That's called star policy. I was known to be good at star policy because I can navigate talking to the artist, because you are his support. You're your sound. All the singers I work with, you are their support. And so many guys kind of get this wrong. They just talk from technical, or they'll say, no, I didn't do that. No, you have to know the psychology of how to deal with your artist, and be there with them in the moment, because they're up there and they're putting their all out in front of all those people. And, you just have to listen to them and see what you can do to make them happy doing sound. And some of them, it's a non-starter. You're not going to win the battle if ever making them happy, but they'll keep you if they see you keep trying. You will stay there. I've had so many artists that tell me that.
I know your career is incredible. It's incredible. Now you had working with Frank Sinatra. I think you had told me he called you the kid. Is that correct?
Well, I'd have to say this honestly. I think he called everybody the kid. I'll be honest. Okay. Everybody was the kid. He never knew my name. But and with Frank, I was more. He came to Golden Nugget. I made it work for the first show he did there, and I was not the mixer. I was the person that set everything up and was beholden to the mixer. I was kind of the system engineer, which is really important to every mixer. I always have someone who's much more technically involved than I am, especially now with all the modern technology and sound to support you. So, but I was actually advancing his shows to arenas, and it just, I ended up getting to talk to him, and just only twice or three times was there really this incredible personal exchange, and it was really, really nice. And then when I was mixing, once he was actually saying, hey, to the band. I mean, and that was old school, because now, you have so much equipment in so many ways, needed then to basically overmix, but it was so nice to let the mix come from the stage. He mixed the show. You were just there to implement what he was doing. He says, hey, it's not the kid's job to get the dynamics right. It's your job. And I'm going to let you know how to get it right, or else you're gone. That's the way it went. And I like working with artists like that,
Yeah, fantastic, amazing.
It was totally inclusive and involved,
Amazing.
All from the heart. All from the heart.
That's how we work, right? All from the heart. Now, you've worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber. You've worked, as you mentioned, with The Who on Broadway, Peter Townsend. What are some of the other Broadway shows that you worked on?
Broadway shows, well, one that I thought was really exciting was Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk with Savion Glover and Your Not So Ordinary Tappers. That was amazing. That was a great piece for the time in terms of, it made a statement. And it made a statement about art, about Black artists. It was, and just that whole history of tapping. They brought the Nicholas brothers from the 30s. I mean, we had them on stage. Gregory Hines would always come by. All these great artists, and the singers that would sing, and Savion would improvise tapping to their singing. It was such a great, in the now show. Of course, it was scripted, but it would change because all of a sudden they go, hey, guess who's here tonight? And it was just unbelievable. And then, Gregory would come up to me and goes, you got my shoes? Because we had special mics on the shoes. So I'd have his shoes. But he always looked at the stage. I have to say and go, that guy, man, the hand of God is on that guy. Savion Glover. It was brilliant. And
very talented man. Yeah, very talented man. Great show. The show was ahead of its time. I did. Yes, I did. It was ahead of its time. It was amazing. Now your touring and your Broadway work led you to meet Rebecca. Am I in the right? Okay. So when did you guys meet? How long ago did you guys meet?
Well, we met It
And
was
how?
Joseph
Where?
and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoats. I was put on this touring show, and the star of that, Joseph, was Donny Osmond in 1995. It was, we first played Chicago, and I know she was on the crew, and it was just like hi, goodbye. But then all of a sudden we ended up in Detroit. It was like, that was a show that lived in cities. We lived in Chicago for quite a period of time. The show lived in Toronto, Minneapolis, where Rebecca joined it. She was so excited to join a Broadway show after she graduated college. And then I went to Chicago, Detroit. In Detroit, we all lived in the same apartment complex, and she needed a ride to work. We had a car. So my colleague and I, who was my associate on the show, we drove her to work, and we just all became good friends, and things just happened.
Things just happened. Really nice. I love it. So Rebecca, when you first met the young Rico, what did you think? What happened? Was it love at first sight? Was it I got to get away from this guy, or
I don't know. I was with a friend of mine who I did the show before Rico did, and in Minneapolis. And so I knew the crew from Toronto, which is where the show originated. And my friend Simon introduced us in the orchestra pit of the Masonic Temple in Detroit. And he said, "This is Rico. He's crazy. Stay away from him." And maybe that's what sparked my interest. I don't know, like crazy people,
Crazy equals fun. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So you met in Minneapolis, and you were on tour with the Donny Osmond show, Joseph, and you went from city to city, and you guys ended up in Boston. It was one of the stops along the tour, correct?
Right. Yeah, met in Detroit actually, and then
in Detroit.
And then Boston, we were in Detroit for maybe 4 or 5 months, something like that. And then we went to Boston, and we were in Boston for almost a year. And then, what happened in Boston?
What happened in Boston? Yes. So Rico,
what happened in Boston? Well, what attracted me to her, besides we're giving a ride and everything, is she told me this crazy dream. So I should make this. Okay. But it was no, nothing weird like that. But it's Rebecca, and it's Rebecca's artistic mind.
Oh boy!
I just had this dream last night, and I was in the bedroom. I was in my bedroom, and it was just fire all around me, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't breathe, and everything, smoke was choking me, and the fire was getting closer and closer. And I go, "Oh my God, what happened?" I unplugged it. Wow, she's out. She's Rico's type of girl. I got to be honest. That was it. I go, she's cool. I told everybody.
That's beautiful.
Well, that's Rebecca.
That's beautiful. That's a great story. So you're on tour, and you end up in Boston, and you're in Boston for a number of nights, and one night you felt a little uncomfortable, and you felt like you needed to go to the hospital. Is that? Am I explaining that correctly? Is that?
Yeah. Well, for a while there, it was just like an ouch in the chest, and then running up the subway stairs to get to the show, because I was always late. Made it, and then sitting behind the console, and first of all calming down, and then an hour later going, I go, "Oh, this is not life. This is not right. I've done a lot of things to my body, and this is not meant to be." So, and I told Rebecca and everybody else, and I said, maybe you should go across the street after the show. And then Mass General was there. So I went across, went to the emergency room. They did an x-ray, 2 young up-and-coming doctors. Just say, something? It looks like the x-ray looks fine. Maybe, you said you just finished loading. You guys just opened. You pulled a muscle. And I go, this doesn't feel like a pulled muscle. Go, that's our prognosis. Went home. And then we're all, theater community is very tight. So we have been hearing about the newest, greatest, most wonderful show was the show Rent, written by Jonathan Larson. And all my friends were designers on it, and talking to them about the great experience of it. But what had happened 3 weeks before this episode with me was that the writer, before opening night, had died from a heart aneurysm. Like he was sipping tea and just fell over and just went, just peacefully went. It was just like wild. And I started reading articles about it, and they actually said that he went to a couple places And one certain hospital said, you pulled a muscle. You definitely pulled a shoulder muscle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he believed them. But little did he know that what was going on in my body happened to him. And God forbid, if I didn't know that, I wouldn't have done further investigation. I would have just listened to them. But when he said he pulled a muscle, because this was so unnatural, and for me to just be huffing and puffing while I'm just at rest and just hanging out and watching TV or just sitting down was just crazy. So I flew to my best friend from high school, who was a cardiologist in Florida, and he looked at the X-ray and dropped it and goes, "What? We got to put you on under a heart scan." Did the heart scan and he goes, "You have an aneurysm. I got to find you a surgeon, and I got to find you a surgeon now. You need your operation now." I'm going, how did this go from living life so wonderfully and going through the trials and tribulations, but this is like life or death within a day. And I made the flight to see him. And he said, "You have a heart aneurysm, it's going to burst." And he showed me the X-ray that they looked at, and he said, "I can't believe they missed this. Look at how cloudy this is. That's your aortic root actually expanding, the actual blood flow from the heart and connected to the aortic valve, which he said was totally destroyed, needs to be replaced." So it's pretty wild that I needed these extra parts immediately. So I said, this is cool. And it's nice that, and I know you're a great doctor and Disney World's down here, but Boston tends to have the best doctors. I just like Boston where I was. So he actually called Harvard Heart and got me an appointment with Dr. Lawrence Cohn, the god of heart surgery. So I flew back on the next flight and I went to go see him. And when I went to see him, it was on a Friday, and he looks at the film. He comes back in his big wooden stoic office at Harvard, and he goes, "Lucas, what are you doing Monday?" I go, I don't know what we do. He goes, you need to do this immediately. Like, he was so calm. I was going, "Can we do it tomorrow?" I goes, "We don't do it on Saturday." And I think he can go through the weekend okay. So it was just quite amazing that we went through the weekend. I hate to say this, but Donny Osmond threw, after the Sunday show, a big, beautiful Last Supper in Little Italy for me. I mean, before the operation, Last Supper before the operation. I didn't think I was going anywhere. I had no idea it happened so quickly. So it was just really comforting. And then the operation happened. And that was open heart operation number one. And I don't know how people can mentally, I don't know. I couldn't prepare for that.
Yeah,
emotionally.
That's a big deal. Well, obviously it's a big deal. Now, Rebecca, you were by his side, but Lucas, you were on the West Coast at the time, or were you on the East Coast when Dad was going through this?
I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I was really young. I don't even remember, when he got his first surgery. However, I do know from my mom actually told me that the whole night of his operation, I was actually crying, which is kind of interesting. There's kind of like a tethered connection, even when I was that young, which was, really interesting to learn, kind of later in life. But yeah, I was really young at the time.
That is very interesting that you did cry all night. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So we're in the hospital and we're ready to go into surgery. And I think you had said it's a Monday when you're going into surgery. And so you kiss Rebecca and say, "I'll see you in a little while." And you go into surgery, and tell us the next steps. What happened then?
Well, the greatest thing is that, as possibly eccentric we all are in our own little ways, Dr. Lawrence Cohn, they actually started a reality show about heart doctors. I heard later on, like maybe 2010, and he was the star. He was quite eccentric, but this guy had saved lives like you wouldn't believe. Jumping on gurneys of kids that got shot in drive-bys and cutting them open while they're being pushed. The ambulance driver was actually telling me said that he had to put on goggles because everybody, watch out, opened her up, saved her life. And this guy was the legend of heart surgery. And I was just so happy to be with him. But anyway, comes in, I wake up from it. I didn't even know what position I was in. He goes, "Write down any communication," because I had like, who knows how many tubes down my throat. I was so disoriented. And all of a sudden, everything started beeping. And I kind of opened my eyes and I see this figure throwing chairs against the wall, hitting everything. And he just goes, "Damn it, I lost your heartbeat. I'll get it back." And he's in front of all my students, because it was one of those, he actually did it in the arena, the surgery arena.
Sure.
So he basically was really upset that he lost my heartbeat. And he says, I'll get it back. We'll make it right. We'll get it fixed. And then what happened was we spent another week. I was healing really well. Spent a week in the hospital. And usually we just get out and he goes, I'm going to keep you another week. Let's see if it heals. Let's see if there's anything we can do to bring it back. Didn't. So then they implanted the pacemaker. So that bummed me out. And all of a sudden now I'm not on my energy and my spirit of, to me, the whole beautiful heartbeat. One chamber wasn't beating. So we did. And he says, guess what? I bet you in 4 or 5 months it's going to come back. And I was, well, okay, if you say so. So basically what happened really quickly is we were doing the show in Chicago. We actually were still doing Joseph, went back to Detroit, then went back to Chicago. And we're sitting there and I'm mixing the show. And it just felt like I had 18,000 cups of coffee and whatever else. And sitting behind the board, and I called backstage. I go, you got to get an ambulance here. My heart is beating out of my chest. So they actually took me to Chicago Presbyterian and University Hospital. And they called him up. And then they had to actually, it's unbelievable. And I to be awake and have the paddling happen, they had to paddle me every 5 minutes to paddle it back into a rhythm because it was going haywire. But the pacemaker was in there. So in their minds, they thought I was pacemaker dependent. What happened was one of them had the bright idea to turn off the pacemaker. And then they just looked at me and I literally had gigantic boils on my chest and on my back. They put a pad here and a pad on your back. And it hurt so bad. And they go, your heartbeat came back. And I just started crying. And I called Boston. I go, I used to call it King Kong, King Cone, the King Cone of everybody. My heartbeat came back. I told you. But that literally was 4 to 5 months afterwards. Genius.
Amazing. Amazing.
So basically it's predicated on that memory that, when I need the next valve, which, they go bad because now I had a pig's valve and that I would be able to go back and I'd have the master do it, But in 2016, well, the master called me I was doing a show in LA and about the Doors. It was great. And then get a phone call from him and he goes, guess what? You better get up here. He goes, we waited too long for this. He goes, but here's another bad thing. I just retired. I'll go, oh, no way. You did not retire. Doc, please unretire. I'll come back now. He says, no, just come back in the next few months. I promise you'll be taken care of well. This is 2016. Things change. And he says, and I'll be in the room. So I went back up in January of that year. And January 3rd was D-Day. My wife and I went up there. We have great pictures of us running around the night before, running around Boston with all the great places we hung. We just had a great night out before I had to go in and spend the whole day detoxing from the alcohol and getting ready for the operation.
Sure.
And being able to pick up a complete glass of wine with all my fingers and do a lot of things. Run my fingers through her hair, do a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay. So Rebecca, so you were obviously on this journey side by side, and you're in Boston. You're ready to get this major operation the next day, and you had a little celebration before that. And you felt very good about everything, I would imagine. Or do you have any doubts about what was going on? Did you have any? Of course, the nervousness of surgery, of course, but you felt pretty good, I would imagine, about everything, the direction it was going, right?
Yeah, I felt pretty good about it. We were supposed to be, done in a couple of days and back at home, back at work in like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Back in New York, or back in North New Jersey where we live. And I was working at NBC at the time. So I was just taking off a couple of days from work. We were supposed to be back. Yeah.
It ends up that you were in the hospital much longer than expected. And in fact, Rico, you actually were is it correct to say you were in a coma, or you were just tell me, how long were you unconscious, I guess is the only word I can think of.
A lovely goddess has to tell you that. I mean, it wasn't really coma though. It was, what did they call it?
Rebecca, I'm sorry.
I would say you were in like a drug-induced coma for maybe, I would say at least a week. And then, I mean, he still was delirious for maybe 2.5 weeks, really. honestly.
Amazing.
Not himself for a while. Like most of the months of January, he was not like himself,
So from a 3-day stay in the hospital, which it was supposed to be, you were actually there almost 3 weeks now, correct?
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
And while you were in 3 weeks,
that last day,
yeah.
And we know the date well because it's coming up in memories on the Facebook every day. And she kept a log and just wrote to all my friends, and not going because I traveled so much globally. Everybody was writing, and it was just, I had no idea, but she was keeping everybody up to date, and that was quite wonderful. But just on January 24th, from January 3rd, January 24th was, because I've been reading through things. It's just so hard today. So hard to read through the things and what went down. January 24th was really D-Day. It was really a catastrophic day. You want to explain, honey?
So your surgery was January 3rd.
Yeah.
And of course, a couple of days after that, I learned that his doctor that he was just talking about, Lawrence Cohen, had crazy, like a heart attack himself and passed away unexpectedly. And the nurses, I told them all, like, when he wakes up, do not tell him that doctor passed away, because he'll get really upset, because that was like, why we were there. Yeah, they were trying to get him off of blood pressure medicine, and his blood pressure was messed up. He was in toxic shock from the surgery because they cut into his arteries that they shouldn't have cut into. All these things went wrong. His surgery was 3 times longer than it should have been. It was, I was in the waiting room on January 3rd. He was like the first surgery in the morning. Like we had to get there at like 6 a.m. And I swear I was in the waiting room at the hospital way after the waiting room actually closed. They let me still sit in there. So like, I didn't learn what was going on with him from like 6 a.m. to probably 9 at night, maybe even later. I think I probably got upstairs to his room at like 10 at night. So that's a lot of time. And he was just, like I said, in a coma, drug-induced state for at least a week, I would say. And then, they'd slowly get him out of it, but he was still very delirious and very sick. Like his kidneys weren't working. His fingers were dusky, and he was on all this blood pressure medicine because his blood pressure was just like up and down and just like all over the place, crazy. Yeah. And but I mean, he was still moving along. So there was still hope. So
yeah. And it sounds like there were so many mishaps along the way, and then
there were a lot of things going on. There were so many things going on, and it was crazy. Yeah. And I kept people updated on Facebook. I would put out like an update every day. Like Lucas was saying, all of that, because it's January right now, all of those memories are coming back up on Facebook. Like, hey, remember you said this back then? And it's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember. It's just like all the memories coming back, like how sick he was, and like he had really good days, and then like the next day it would be a disaster. And then he would have a good day, and then the next day would be like awful. Yeah. So
what a ride. What a ride, and what trauma his body was going through, and the stress you were going through as well. It's pretty incredible, pretty amazing is right. So we're at January 24th, and then another big mishap occurs, where you take a real turn for the worst. And walk us through that, Rebecca, if you can. I don't want to bring these memories back, but it's important.
Yeah, we were talking about it earlier today because Tom Brady retired today, And one of my big memories from that day was that the nurses that were on staff were watching the Patriots game and were totally focused on that and not focused on Lucas from my memory. Lucas was there. Young Lucas was there earlier in the day. And if you remember, Rico was sweating and he had a fever, and he was very agitated that whole day. And I could tell there was something wrong, and so I would, if I saw anything wrong with him or anything new, like if his blood pressure was being weird or anything, I would go and tell somebody so they could come in and check him, And I just remember these nurses being infatuated with the Patriots game and not really paying attention to him. And then
or to anybody coding.
Right. And then Lucas left because he had to get back to school, I think, or wherever he was going. Yeah. And so I was there alone with Rico, and still being aware that he's not well, there's something going on, something's happening. Then all of a sudden, his eyes roll back, and I didn't know what was going on. It was the scariest moment of my life. I ran and got the nurse, and it was cold blue, they were all on him, and they ushered me out into the hallway. And after a half hour, I'd say, they revived him. He had a cardiac arrest. They had to give him, they figured out from his blood count. What was your blood count? That he was missing at least 8 pints of blood.
They transfusion with 8 pints.
Yeah. And
I was at 3.7.
3.7.
Which is basically not having a drop of blood in your body for your heart to beat.
Right. So they had him on all this blood pressure medicine, and they didn't have the volume of his blood in his body at the correct level to deal with the heart medicine. So in my mind, it's this. So he had a cardiac arrest, and they were oh, he must be bleeding out somewhere in his body, his brain or his, in his abdomen or something. So we have to give him 8 pints of blood and then take him for a CAT scan to find out what's going on. He might not survive it. So,
oh my goodness.
We're going to take him as soon as the last bag of blood goes in. We're going to take him down to CAT scan, but we're just warning you, he might not survive the trip down there to the CAT scan. And I'm okay, how do you deal? I don't know.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Right. Sure.
But they're you can go in and stay with him right now while the last bag of blood goes into his body. So I'm sitting there, and I remember the clear tube of blood and the red blood going so slow into his body, and I'm just thinking, please hurry up, please go faster so he can get down there so they can figure out what's wrong. So then they took him down, and I was up in the room alone, and I tried to just I'm please, I just want to go to sleep. Just let me go to sleep and let me wake up and let everything be okay. And I woke up, and he was back, and they came into me and they said, we didn't find any bleed at all in his body. So we're baffled at what the heck happened. We have no idea why he had such a little amount of blood in his body. And the one thought that came to my mind instantly was, I know why he has no blood in his body, because they have him hooked up to this dialysis machine that none of the nurses, except for one, knew how to really run. And this dialysis machine would have a cartridge that had a filter and all these tubes, and his blood was clotting for some reason. And the cartridge would get clotted. So once that got clotted, it wouldn't work. And they would have to take the cartridge out and throw it away and put a new cartridge in. And I asked the nurses maybe a week before this all happened, how much blood is in those cartridges when you throw the blood away? Because I don't know how blood works in the body. I don't know if it regenerates like or anything. So I would ask questions all the time. I'm like, how does that work? Because like you're throwing away a lot of his blood every time you throw those cartridges away, right? And the nurse was like, oh no, it's just like 200 milliliters of blood in there or something, whatever. And I'm like, but that adds up when you throw away like 5 of the cartridges in like a couple days time, right? So that's the first thing that came to my mind. And the next day I was like, so one of the doctors was walking down the hallway with me and I said, so like, what do you think happened? Like he was missing all this blood, but where did all the blood go? Or like, what is the equivalency of all the blood he was missing? And the doctor told me that the amount of blood in his body, it was like he was bleeding out, like somebody stabbed him and he was on the floor. And that's how much blood he had in his body. Like that's how little blood he had. And I was just, how does that happen? And the doctor was like, we don't know. Like it's a mystery. And I was like, yeah, it was the dialysis machine. I know it was.
But in the report, it was like someone stabbed him and he bled out. And when I became conscious, I kept thinking about that. The next hospital I went to, I just have to say, I was paranoid watching people with packages walking towards my room going, let me get the nurse. Who's this person? Because I didn't know what the heck happened in the first hospital to wake up to this and no feet.
Yeah.
I mean,
so you went to another hospital after that, correct? And that's where another mishap occurred, where you actually were.
Rebecca should finish. I'm sorry, I jumped in.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
What happened? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I had mentioned that your fingers were dusky previously to the cardiac arrest, which is due to the blood pressure medicine that he was on, because his blood pressure was so crazy the whole time he was in Boston until after they gave him the correct amount of blood in his body after the cardiac arrest. But unfortunately, after he had the cardiac arrest, to keep him alive, they had to give him all this heart medicine to keep his blood pressure up. And that really killed his fingers and his toes. And
vasopressor. Because
yeah.
before this incident, I still had honey, I still had my feet were fine.
Right.
They weren't black and
pretty
dead.
fine. Yeah.
And my hands.
I mean, I was taking pictures of everything. So I have pictures of, before that cardiac arrest and after. And it was definitely the cardiac arrest that really kind of cemented the fact that his fingers were not going to make it. And I mean, we didn't know anything. Like I had never heard of such a thing before this. Like I didn't know that you could have surgery and lose your fingers and your toes. Like I had no idea.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. So a lot of the information we found from the report too, like when we were in it, when it was happening, there was not really a lot of communication about what was going on. And so we had to do our homework with the report after the fact, which I'm sure we'll kind of get into a little bit more later to understand what exactly was happening. And, he was on, the vasopressors and the blood pressure medicine to, kind of get the blood to his vitals because he was in septic shock. And so that was making his fingers kind of dusky. But they were weaning him off up until that point. So, and, that was actually reflected in the report. And again, this wasn't really known that much to us, but it wasn't until the cardiac arrest where they had to put him back on the pressors. And so, our biggest question was, why did he go into cardiac arrest? And it's obvious that led to him having to be put back on this medication that's obviously killing his fingers and toes. And so, we were trying to figure out, what was happening, and we just couldn't get answers.
And just so the normal way,
Now, walk me through this quickly. So after the cardiac arrest, he obviously they had to revive him and take him into another place. Now, Rebecca, you watched them take him away, and when they decided they had to amputate his fingers and his toes, did they consult with you first, or they just did what they?
Actually, he didn't, like, the amputations didn't take place for months after that.
Oh, okay.
Which is surprising, I'm sure, to many people.
Yeah, it's surprising to me, for sure. Yeah.
No, like, I mean, when was it? September that you had your, like, we're talking.
Yeah, no, the hands. Well, we'll show pictures. Hands in June, and feet not until December, because it doesn't just take away. So people know, vasopressor sucks oxygen out of your extremities. They make it a decision. Does he want to be alive and not be brain dead? So, okay, we use vasopressor, sucks the oxygen out of your extremities. I mean, we know that for a while, they thought I was really going to lose my right leg, all right, completely. And this has been happening during COVID when people's hearts fall off the charts. So they waited, we waited, and I'm staring at dead feet until December, when they thought there was good enough skin to save enough. And we'll go into that story later about waking up from that operation. No, it took a long time. It took a long time.
And were you hospitalized all this time, or you were home?
Hospitalized until May in different. We wanted to get out. We got out of there.
You weren't hospitalized. You were in the rehab.
Yeah, but in there, and then also UPenn for about 2.5 months, and then they downgraded me. Because when I left Harvard, when I was just said, we got to get out of here, because I just feel like they wanted to just tuck me under the rug and then forget about me. We actually went to University of Pennsylvania for another 1.5 months, which I found out recently that for the first month there, I was still, on the razor's edge of life. I thought I was doing much better because I was conscious and everything was okay, but I wasn't really. But then all of a sudden things just got better, and they were able to downgrade me, and then they moved me into a rehab, and then I got home. And
a good reason why you got better was that your kidneys came back. Like, his kidneys hadn't been working for almost a month. And once he got those 8, like after the cardiac arrest, after he got all that blood back in his body, it seemed like a couple days after that, his kidneys came back miraculously. And once his kidneys came back, like, he just started to get better, because I think that just cleansed everything out. So,
body started to work normally again.
And then we took an ambulance all the way from Boston to Philly, like he was saying.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Philly.
That was a fun ambulance.
Obviously, Phil said Philly's a good city to be sick in, and it was. They really worked passionately for saving. When we started crying, when he says, they basically the amputee doctors, the plastic surgeon, who said, "What the hell were you doing up there? What did you do? What did they do to you? What did you let them do this to you?" I go, I was in another planet. I had no idea what they were doing to me. He says, "Well, just know this. I can't promise you not being amputated from right below the knee." What? And we just started crying. And then he turned around. We love this doctor. I still go see him, and we've gone out to dinner. He just says, "I'll do my best to save everything. Don't worry." But he said it was just time. We just had to wait and see if good cells grew back in my feet to give me more feet for him to make my little beanie bag alien feet that he's made for me. God bless him, that I can walk and jog on.
Amazing. So excuse me, but walk me through this. So at this point, you still had use of your fingers and limited use of your feet, or limited use of both, and they were trying to save everything for you. Am I correct there?
Not say they couldn't save everything. So what happened was, I'd have to show you pictures. Like, this is what they could say. This was in a fist. That's why I only have this left. This was in a fist. This, we were just praying for more and more good skin, because you basically, and I'm lefty, and vasopressor acts differently on your dominant side. So, but the thumb to forefinger, that is really the crux of everything. I'm learning now, those basic human being needs of using fingers. You need those two more than anything, really, because that's you're grabbing things. It's opposing fingers, opposing forces. Your thumb grabs against other fingers to do things, turn knobs, take off bottle caps, do all that necessary to do buttons. That's what you do. But so we were just waiting to see how much good skin would come back. Not much good skin did come back. But what really was I want to just say this, I didn't say it before. The painful part of this was that, and this is why I got happy and stronger, is because they left me like that. They kept coming in and apologizing for what happened and saying, we're sorry that you don't have the use of your fingers anymore. Because basically, with them dead, Anthony, it was the worst thing in the world, because now I can do so much. But when all the dead tissue was there, they were just frozen in space. I couldn't do anything. And when I tried to eat, they used this Velcro thing and tried to put this plastic fork, and I'm eating and it's just falling here. It was not going in my mouth. I couldn't do anything. And I just thought that was the rest of my life. I had no idea what it was going to be like after the amputations. I had no idea that I was going to be able to drive. I was going to be able, but I had to teach myself that. And all amputees do. I had no idea. So we're talking about for at least 7 months in my mind, every day, 24 hours, no sleep, just going, what did they do to my life? Because I had no idea what I was going to be able to do. I thought I was not going to be able to do anything. I thought that was it.
Sure. That's the normal reaction. I don't know how, I mean, I can't imagine, but I agree with you. That's a normal reaction. And it's astonishing to me how this all went down. And so you're basically you're a genius in the entertainment world, a sound engineer, a sound designer, and you need use your fingers to do this, and you can't have your livelihood anymore, at least in the beginning, which is also something that hits your head and hits you mentally and messes you up a little bit. I mean, your life, I can't believe it. You know, I can't believe what happened here. Since we met, Rico, I think about you every day. And when I do the little things in life that I do with taking for granted, I think of you, that these things are major chores for you, and that's also part of this whole thing, you know. And man, I love you, and I can't imagine. So I'm with you there. I wish I can help in some way, but sure. No,
I wish I could, like we talked, I'd like to, like, I just took a shower before all this, and the Zen ritual of taking a shower, have to think about everything, have to put something down. I put a little towel down in the tub, because these little feet, I've had them slip. And can you imagine if I broke things? Maybe I'd never have use of them again. The little towel down, everything has to be in the right spot so I can do what I can do. I can shower and have special tools to shower. And I'm not the only one. I love the amputee community, because it's just so powerful. And everybody that's in this position, that just has the willpower to go on with life and do things. At U of Penn, we heard about amputees doing like amazing things that I can't do what they do. The ones that lose their leg above the knee, they do amazing things. Well, you see them in the Olympics. They run and win. It's just quite amazing what they do.
Amazing. The spirit is amazing. Now, Lucas, you as you got older, you followed this journey. You were in this journey, and you really got involved with Rebecca in trying to make things right to a degree. And can you tell us where you are now? I know you have detailed information. Rebecca kept an amazing detailed journal. You actually are in the medical, you're actually pursuing your PhD in directly into the medical field as well. And tell us where you are now with this, and tell us what the next steps are.
Yeah, so I'm doing my PhD in the biomedical sciences. I do traumatic brain injury research, actually. And so, the one thing that, kind of getting that type of degree does is it makes you pretty good at reading stuff and kind of understanding what might not make sense, and trying to find gaps kind of in things that others write, believe it or not. And so, after all this had happened, my father had, looked into, seeking legal counsel to try to understand, what had gone wrong and how we could be helped in those ways. And they sat on it for about 2.5 years and did nothing.
Mhm.
And so my dad called me one day. I remember I was at Starbucks and he called me and he was like, they just told me that there's nothing they could do. And we just kind of sat there and we're like, are you kidding me? It's been 2.5 years and you only have 3 years before, pretty much you have to, um, you know, what is it? You kind of submit your, um, I guess admission to sue, or else that's it.
You
And
lose it,
so
yeah.
we kind of sat there, and I was like, you know what? Send me the report from the hospital. It's what, like 12 or 14,000 pages of just craziness because it's not really that organized and all this stuff. I was like, send it to me. Let's go through it. Let's read it ourselves and see what went on. Let's read their notes. Let's read everything that went through it. And then, my dad has friends that are physicians, as do I. There are a lot of physicians in my field that also pursue research and, to try to understand things. And so we spent months, going through the, all of the notes and all of the records ourselves. And we were able to find those gaps ourselves and then, seek other legal counsel to kind of put this sort of through and understand really what's going on. So, when my dad had mentioned, that his blood level was 3.7 grams per deciliter, his hemoglobin level was that, or, Rebecca's mentioning that, his H&H was kept really low. That was from us going through the records years after the fact, when the legal counsel who was supposed to be doing this didn't. And that was us educating ourselves on what had gone on. So that way we could actually understand if things went wrong or if this was kind of normal procedure and we were just shit out of luck. And to be honest, when we went through it, we had actually found that throughout the course, especially leading up to before he went into cardiac arrest the first time, they had kept his blood level very low. They had kept it, I don't think we mentioned it before, but his hemoglobin was at around 7 grams per deciliter, which we had, heard from, experts that is actually pretty low. And then on the day that he went into cardiac arrest, it did dip to 3.7. And what's crazy is that we cross-referenced, as Rebecca had mentioned before, that hemodialysis machine, and we can actually see when the machine went down. That's in the records. They have thousands of pages of when it just stops working. And in the hours leading up to that, it went down twice within 2 hours leading up to it. And so we cross-referenced that. We cross-referenced how, all the drugs that he was on, how they were weaning him off and how he had to be put back on the vasopressors right after. And we also were able to cross-reference when his fingers and toes actually went from being musky to having, they call it necrosis, which is the actual, or gangrene, which is when that tissue actually dies. None of the tissue was dead until after the cardiac arrest. And so, and not just me, but we all really put in the time to go through, all of the records to really understand what was happening and where we think the care could have been better and where we think that there could have been mistakes made. And it was crazy to us that, one, you can't really depend on legal counsel all the time to do this type of work. You have to do it yourself and bring it to them so that they can build a case. And two, there was no communication from the doctors about any of this throughout the time of his stay and afterwards. We didn't even know that they nicked the pulmonary artery until after. We had to read that in the report. Are you kidding?
They never told me that.
They just said that he was, there were complications and he had to be, kind of kept, because when they do the surgery, you're kept really cold. You're essentially dead. Open heart surgery. They didn't say why. We didn't find out why until after. And so, one thing, not to tangent too far, but, we actually did go and we had a meeting with, the surgeon years later. And they invited us to the hospital to kind of extend what we thought they were extending an arm to us. They were like, hey, let's talk about what happened and let's see how we could help. And so, we went to Boston and we sat in a room with the administrator, some other person who was supposed to be kind of like their prosthetics guy, and the surgeon who had done my father's surgery. And they sat us down, and the surgeon kind of started off the meeting and pretty much said, what had happened was you had come in for surgery. There were some complications, and unfortunately, the outcome was suboptimal, but you are alive. And that was pretty much it. He never went over the complications from the surgery itself. He never went over the complications of the care when he went into cardiac arrest, or any of the hurdles that he was going through throughout his stay at all. It was as if he just didn't even remember or think to actually go through the documents. And that was really hard for us, because we're all sitting there and we're thinking two things. One, I can't believe this person just made it seem like, everything was good that happened, that it was almost like a success. And two, the fact that he had sat us down and went through his care kind of sequentially without mentioning any of the missteps that happened, pretty much told us that this must be what he says to other people who haven't actually gone through the medical records. So because we went through the records, we questioned him. We said,
knew the truth. You knew the truth. Yeah.
And you tell us about the nick in the pulmonary, because now we know that happened. He didn't even, he was like, whoa, like he was kind of thrown off by the fact that we knew this stuff. And then we asked him how could he have lost that much blood? And there was no evidence of pericardial perfusion, which is kind of like where a lot of the experts went at first. Oh, blood probably pooled around the heart. It didn't. There's actually a line in the notes, in the actual records, that says there's no evidence of pericardial perfusion after he went into cardiac arrest. No answer for where the blood went. And we even asked him, do you think that the fact that this hemodialysis machine was going down and went down twice in the hours before he went into cardiac arrest, could that have contributed to the blood loss? And he didn't have an answer for us. He said, I'm going to have to look more into it. And that was it. That's all we got.
Unbelievable. So, unbelievable. And that was a great, that was amazing description of what went on. Now, where are we now? Do we have time still to reach an attorney to have someone accept the case?
I'd like to say this. Time? Only because, this is wonderful. And the investigative work that Lucas did was quite amazing. Quite amazing. And everything. There was over 11,000 pages of this. And, I kept meeting him because, I was going on tour and we're doing rehearsals for certain tours in LA. And I'd meet him and he'd come back with all this information. And other doctors had actually, basically said he's absolutely right. And they've come up with even more things because that Lucas and I wouldn't know, and Lucas wouldn't know. I mean, with options they could have done after they nicked the coronary artery, which, but now we're getting in the malpractice part. But I just want to say from the compassion, the emotional side of it, is that all this happened, okay? And I'm sitting there with these dead fingers, and a group of 10 people come in that I can remember in the original hospital, I'm saying, with Dr. Shaker surrounded by him, and Rebecca came in with them. But Rebecca, as you see, can be soft-spoken and kind of reserved and be more understanding. And when they came in and they said, really sorry about the fact that you will not have the use of your fingers anymore in your life, she basically said to the head surgeon, she says, you do surgery all day long. How would you like that if somebody just said, I'm sorry, this is what's going to happen? So basically, all the lawyer stuff happened only because as soon as basically when we left Boston, it was like, hey, don't let the door hit you in the butt when you leave. No communication, nothing. No compassion about, well, here's one of the 10% of things that go wrong. That things do happen. And then there were, complications upon complication. Like the doctor told me on the phone, that head surgeon said, hey, we hit a lot of road bumps. What do you want me to do? I go, yeah, you hit a sinkhole too at the end, And then he goes, guess what? We're going to take care of it. We're going to go to MIT and get you uber modern prosthetics. That's what I wanted. That's what I really wanted. Okay. I was the unlucky one. This happened. Now I'm breathing. I'm here. I'm starting to feel better. But you don't want to talk to me at all. And you don't want to talk about anything about on your grounds, on your property. This all happened. I walked in there happy with fingers and toes and scratching my hair and picking my nose, and everything was happy. And now I can't do anything and anything constructive. And I just looking at these dead fingers. You promised, you then said that you would show some kind of compassion. So what happened was, I don't think I want to see this happen to anybody else. Number one. Number two, what about me? What about helping me out with carrying on with my life? My life is not over and my career is not over by no means. And I'm not going to let that happen. And that's what's driven me to keep going and keep going on this path, this journey with ups and downs. One day, insurance, what they do is they actually, and I'm going to go into this for a second, because they're not going to give me any prosthetics. So all of a sudden, the right hand gets passed in December. Yes, you're going to give you a right hand, but they're going to give me the palm part and the fingers part because that's what's missing. But to make that work, there has to be a whole unit here that comes up to here, weeds these muscles and tells it to work. And this is the cheaper one, the mechanical one, the electronic one. They don't want to spend that money for you. So they're not approving anything from the wrist up to make all that work. Sure, you could just put that on. And then the other hand needed some upgrades. And they think like, I want nail polish. They go, that's all you want that for is cosmetic reasons. No, it makes the hand that's experimental work better. And
unbelievable.
You approve the hand. You approve the hand. I have it. And now they made really, really modest costing upgrades, but they say it's for cosmetics. No, the cosmetic thing I would really like to have is my freaking fingers back. Give me a break. Cosmetic what? Prosthetics? Give me a break. It's bullshit. Excuse me.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay, man. It's
we're
okay.
talking about the hematocrit level and everything else. Be honest with you. Hey, they could have picked that number that Lucas is saying was low, that I'm seeing my doctors now that are involved in reading this, and all the doctors, they could have picked that as low. That would have been great. But guess what? It dropped down to nothing. It dropped down to nothing. Explain that. That's what you need to explain. If every other doctor that I've talked to has said it should have been a couple points higher, so they had a little margin for error. But no, that's the number we keep it at, right? But it went to nothing. Explain that. You're telling me somebody came in and stabbed me. It's in the report. Somebody came in and stabbed me. And then boom, we wash our hands clean. Now I'm going to say this on your podcast. Everybody should read the article because I got a call from the Boston Globe. I didn't take part in that article, but I'm going to have him write about it. He has a Dr. Shushing, and it says, The Secret of Boston Doctors. This is a guy, they call him the Mudraker of Boston. He writes about everything in healthcare and construction and all corruption. But he talks about that whole hospital system and how corrupt it is when something happens wrong to somebody. When something happens wrong, they don't get anything. They don't get anything. They just gave back a mother whose child became, I'm saying, special needs. And she won I think 7 million, was it? And they gave it back. The state made the hospital give it back because no, they're charitable. They know how to legally protect the hospital. And we know which hospital we're talking about. The two of them are now joined. So I'm just saying to everybody, make sure you check when you go into a hospital, what the laws are there. Because in Pennsylvania, I would have got, we wouldn't be talking. I would have gotten hands. Pennsylvania there's a no fault. It happened on our grounds. It happened during us, being in your chest. Guess what? We're going to help you out. It happens in New York that way. Doesn't happen in Massachusetts. And there's people in Massachusetts. That's why I have lawyers that aren't really malpractice that are helping me out with this. They are so upset that in their state and people globally come to Boston because of people like Dr. Lawrence Cohn that aren't alive anymore to get operated on. And all it is corruption. All they do is move those doctors out of those main hospitals to country hospitals. It's amazing reading all this system, reading about that system.
But honey, one thing they might be really good at is saving your life from the mistakes that they made.
Thank you. That's all they kept saying to us during that meeting.
That's what they kept saying to us.
That's basically it.
Yeah, unbelievable. So, Rico, you mentioned a lawyer. Do you guys have a lawyer at this time that you're involved with, or are you seeking representation for this at this time?
I have a Bible here. God forbid, I have this lawyer is great. But guess what? It's because of my entertainment business. I put all points alert out for lawyers in Boston. This guy came back. First of all, the top malpractice lawyers contacted me, waited 2.5 years, and then dropped me. Right? Because, we can't do it. Then the next one, 4.5 months, back and forth, spending so much money, dropped me. had 6 weeks left. This guy, who's a workman's comp lawyer, who has a lot of friends in malpractice, we just thought this was so disgusting. And hearing about other cases like this, about people getting screwed over, just was so abhorrent. He has so much money invested in the case. He got down there to the court, and got it in just in time. He got it in. He got it right under the wire of statute of limitations. And now I'm sitting there with him, but I am looking for a Boston lawyer. It has to be a Boston malpractice lawyer, and we do have some people interested in it because it's a hard case because it's in a place where they definitely have the upper hand. It just is. Yeah. If you read that article by this guy, it's just amazing to hear what's happened to people that's almost much more clear cut, but this is pretty clear cut.
Because the thing that kind of made it, I guess, a little bit hairy at first was, complications during a surgery, they kind of waive all liability. But the thing is that the complications that really led to, my father's, loss of his fingers and toes wasn't due directly to the surgical complications. It was due to the care that happened 3 weeks later. He went into cardiac arrest 3 weeks after the surgery, and there's no explanation as to why. And there's nothing in the records. No doctors have given us any reasoning for why this could have or even should have or how it happened. So, the fact that this happened, the fact that this directly led to, the death of the tissue on his extremities and then having to kind of re-pump him with vasopressors, that has nothing to do with the nick in the pulmonary artery. That has to do with the care 3 weeks later. So,
bordering on negligent, or negligent in some ways,
negligent, not bordering. That's negligent. What they might say. Negligence. Sorry, negligence. We know it's negligence. A lot of other doctors know it's negligence too.
Yeah.
But it's just it's their own little, and I have to say, this mafia. And I've talked to other people in Massachusetts, but you can read this gentleman's articles, and I'm in touch with him now because the only way to get this to happen for me is to get the word out, is to completely get the word out, and for it to happen to everybody else living in the Massachusetts area, so they see that the Massachusetts Board of Medicine, that's enough. They back up those doctors, they move them around, they hustle and bustle, so that there's no malpractice cases that are really awarded. It's got to be like they almost have pictures of a doctor stabbing a child or something. It's really abhorrent. It's horrible. So I want to get the word out. I'm going to get the word out about how they told me to go to charity. They invited us up for a weekend and they just embarrassed us. And he whispered in my ear, that doctor, he whispered, they won't let me do anything. They won't let me do anything because he's the one that told me they're going to take care of things. That's where it really falls down. This is when this happens. So this 10 to 14% of people just have to live the rest of their lives differently and not have any money to get. I am so blessed with the support I have of my family and the support I have of people in my industry. And I'm still working. So, and I'm not going to let them win. There's no way. They're not going to beat me down to where I could be. And let's face it, there's a lot of other options you can get when you get this sad. And there's moments of sadness about this happening. It's just uncanny.
You mentioned your family and Rebecca and Lucas and of course Rico. Your spirit is second to none. I mean, but your family is amazing, and the way you guys have banded together even more is just incredible. The point of our podcast is to get visibility for this, and you have my word that we will send this to anyone you want us to send it to get visibility for what happened to you, this injustice that happened to you and your family. To even speak about it today, I applaud you because I know you're revisiting it and you keep on revisiting it. And I really thank you for revisiting it again today and telling us your story. I'm at a loss for words after hearing this, and all I can tell you is you have our love, you have our support. Whoever listens to this podcast and sees it and listens to it, hopefully it'll touch them as well, where we can get the word out to get the injustice corrected. Show us your hands, Rico. Before we go, show us your hands, buddy.
I should show you a little foot. Rebecca, what do you think? Should I show them a foot? You don't want them to see a foot. You know, they were worse with those.
You'll probably fall over
those
in the chair.
toenails. I miss those toes, those ugly toes. Miss them big time.
Well, his surgeon that did his feet was very proud of the job he did. Yes, because he saved. I mean, the reason why they left, they leave your hands like that for so long is the demarcation. They have to make sure that everything's finished, like dying. Let's just say. So like the doctors just took every little bit that they could to leave everything they could, that they could leave. Mm-hmm. And his foot surgeon was just like so proud of the job he did. And he did a great job because Lucas can still walk, and he can drive a car. His hand surgeon was amazing. Also, we were blessed with that. At least the hand surgeon and his foot surgeon were just like brilliant doctors. So that was a blessing.
Your family is a family of class and integrity. And Rico, you mentioned something in closing that you're still working. I can vouch that Rico is still working. He calls me every morning, at least 3 times a day, and tries to figure things out. No, you never bother me. I love you. I wish you'd call me 10 times a day.
What are we going to do next?
Exactly. I love that. But the podcast is our fighting spirit, and nothing defines the fighting spirit than this family. And I thank you for being with us today. I thank you for sharing this story and revisiting it, as I mentioned earlier. And you have my word that we will do anything in our power to help you. Thank you.
My heart is connected to yours. Thank you so much.
Always, brother. Lucas, God bless you. Everyone. Rebecca, thank you. Love you. And
thank you.
And Rico, we'll get this done, man. I gave you my word that I will do everything in my power to help. And we will start on Monday. As long as you don't go out and play in the snow again, because you're supposed to do it on Friday.
That's right. Exactly.
I love you. Thank you so much for doing this tonight. I really love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Ciao. Bye, baby.
Ciao. Lucas, take care of yourself,
my friend. Babe. Bye. Bye, son. Bye, wifey.
Bye. See you soon.
Beautiful.
See you real soon.
Beautiful job, guys. Thank you. I feel like I'm part of your family. And again, I love Rico. Now I love Lucas, and now I love you, Rebecca. So let's make this a mission. We know a lot of people. Let's make this a mission to get this wrong righted. All righty?
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on another episode of Our Fighting Spirit. We'll see you again next time, and keep fighting and keep winning.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast player and leave us a review.